Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host, and by George, I've got the other two associate hosts on also too. We've been doing all kinds of things. There's a lot of things that are going on from a national perspective, from a county perspective, from a city perspective. It's all over the place. That's what's to a certain degree. From a futuristic standpoint, you can always reference some of our old shows because we're going to be very persistent, if you will, and right to the point in regards to some of the more current issues here in the city of Portland. Okay, and there's a lot to be had, by the way. Even there, we've got to pick and choose. But we want you to know that we're going to be with you, and hopefully you will share. You will share these shows. I realize they may be an hour long or this, that, and other, but the fact of the matter is they're very, very important. And this is sort of like an informational, educational format that we've always used, that we want to make sure you get the word. You need more than sound bites, especially today. There are a lot of issues we need to discuss. With that, I want to again welcome Liz Dixion and Rachelle Dixion. They're here on the show with me today, and they will continue to be on the show with me today, even though we're going to have guests. Sometimes we'll have guests at the first half of the show, and then the second half of the show, they'll be in to comment on them and basically expand just what are the benefits to our community across the board, okay? So with that, I think what we're going to do is that in the other little part of the format, we're going to give you sort of like a current event type of thing at the front end of the show. Normally about maybe 5 or 10 minutes, depending upon what the issue is. Because then we're going to go into maybe a topic that we want to discuss, okay? And starting off today, we're going to start off with maybe current event. I guess you've heard about the whole issue of these 8 people being shot up in Georgia, okay, in Atlanta. And we're going to talk about that because it has some relevancy. Because they're basically saying that it should be a race issue, race and hate issue. That's being questioned, by the way, by some and saying, well, it wasn't. It was very interesting, but that's another subject matter. But the fact of the matter is, Black folks have been dealing with race and hate from day one. Even after Lincoln got shot back in those days in the 1800s, because guess what? He was talking about freeing blacks, and even some people are challenging that, freeing African Americans and slaves, if you will, and also talking about voting rights of all things, talking about voting rights at that point in time. And here we are today, and we're still dealing with the same issue aspect of it. So race, voting, and whatever, it's an issue. But it's kind of interesting in terms of how we're doing it here in the Portland metropolitan area. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over now and give Rachelle an opportunity to chat a little bit about what she thinks about the whole issue of the Asian community demonstrating today downtown Portland on the whole issue of how they've been affected with the whole issue of hate and the impact that it has on their community. So with that, Rachelle?
Well, I'd like to, a couple of things spring to mind. First of all, I think they should be protesting. This is Women's History Month. This is, and surely Chinese women and Chinese people have played a part in American history. They built the railroads. Many things in San Francisco they're responsible for. So I'm just embarrassed for the United States to behaving so poorly to any community that isn't their own community, and especially to people who aren't white and male. I also wonder why the broader Asian community wasn't included. I know that the emphasis has been on the Chinese, but I think it would be nice to move with solidarity to keep the Japanese, the Korean, the Filipinos, and other folks involved, Vietnamese. As you know, I was born in Chinatown, not in Portland, but I was born in Chinatown in Seattle. I also just don't see that as being the homeland of most Asian people inside of Portland anymore. So I wondered why not go have some folks do a press conference at the Jade District. I didn't hear anything about that happening over there, and I was a little concerned. I was thinking maybe we should have it in both places. This is an atrocity, And it's why we have to stop white supremacy.
Mhm. Okay, sounds good. Liz, what are your comments on what you've been seeing of late media in regards to this whole issue of hate and the Viet and how the and how the Asian community is responding to it here in Portland?
One of the things, I don't know if you all ever read the Asian Reporter. There are a lot of issues that surround the Asian community, Vietnamese, Chinese, Japanese, and for some reason, news, I said publicly, those communities are not and have not been historically as verbal as with the things that affect their community in terms of white supremacy, because there have been reparations made throughout the history of the state of Oregon and in other states that I believe, it's just my opinion, that have kind of quieted down these groups. Because when you look at these groups and living in a capitalistic society and having been treated from the beginning, the inception of the United States, these groups, for example, there are 6 nationalities in the state of Oregon, okay, that have suffered inhumane treatment but have been awarded with financial reparation, financial taxation, and just benefits, just benefits to help their communities grow economically and thrive. And we see that going on today. So when you look at these Asian, the Vietnamese, what do they call them, grooming parlors, spas, who can say how those spas were able to even be created and carry on as long as they've been carrying on? I've lived in Atlanta for 28 years during my younger years, and these businesses have always been thriving businesses throughout the cities and the states. Nobody went in and shut those places down. So we just don't know what's going on. But what I do know what's going on in the state of Oregon is racism is at an all-time high, and just the fact that what's happened with Joanne Hardesty is just appalling. How she could be out there by herself with nobody watching her back. A lot of the things that had happened to her could have been prevented had she just had somebody with her outside of her home or inside of her home. If she had somebody with her to say, no, this can't happen, this didn't happen. But she had no witnesses, she had nobody. She's just been under attack ever since she's been in office. And I think that's just appalling.
All right. Well, okay. Like I said, we want to expand the whole issue on Joanne Hardesty, because that's going to be one of our main topics. I might add that Liz, you made a point about there was some sort of a reluctancy from the Asian community. In fact, that's all over the country. Here in the Portland metropolitan area, you mentioned the Asian Reporter, and I'm very familiar with the publisher. He happens to be Puerto Rican. Not Puerto Rican. I'm sorry. He happens. He's I think Puerto Rican. Anyway, but the bottom line is that the publisher, from the standpoint of that paper, they do not want to get into politics. That's why you don't see them endorsing any candidates running for office and this, that, and another. And then another concern that I've had, and I saw this years back, is the fact that because they don't get involved aspect of it, but on the other side, the majority community gets very much involved with them with reference to the set-aside, the minority programs. There are many Asians that are basically taking advantage, if you will, of the so-called set-aside, the money. And basically, in all due respect, and it really has a major impact on blacks, because blacks have worked hard, basically promoting and doing everything they can to get the set-aside program. But yet and still, they're deprived in many ways as far as the access to those funds. I want to throw that out on the table to say that hopefully,
Bruce,
yes, go on.
I just wanted to jump in and say I am very much supportive of the AAPI community, the Asian
Right.
and Pacific Island community, but I also want to add what you're saying is true. Every group in the United States has gotten their civil rights
Yep.
off the back of African Americans and the work that we've done in Black.
Yes, yes,
So whether you've been gay, that the Pride started as a riot, started by a Black woman named Marsha.
Yes.
We see in every movement, there have been Black people who have headed that movement. Chinese people wouldn't have any rights, and immigrants wouldn't have any rights if rights hadn't first been established for African Americans. We continue to share a disproportionate amount of the racism, but we don't necessarily get the response when we need it. I'm glad to see people are standing up for Asian women because there are so much terrible things going on with Asian women. And I'd also like to comment Black women, because that doesn't get talked about a lot as well. So I just wanted to add that in, that I definitely see that they take a lot of the benefits that they're offered, but they haven't necessarily been on the forefront of fighting for the rights of Black and Indigenous folks. And so I get the conversations around that. And for the community that I know that's Asian, I'm going to be asking them in the future, will you respond? Some of them already have. I mean, a lot of my friends have made donations to feed the houseless, and they're not necessarily verbal about it, but for those who haven't stepped up, it is time to step up, because this is white supremacy and it will continue. And if we sit down and just the Asians protest, they're not enough of the population, I think, to make a dent. How is this guy able to walk to different locations? At first I thought they were all in one location. So did he hide the weapon? Or, I mean, I have so many questions, Bruce, right? So he went into this community, specifically Asian, walked from business to business, and nobody could have stopped him?
Yeah.
And he walked? Nobody could have stopped him? We're always talking about police safety. Where was the safety for these women? And Joanne Hardesty needs some support.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
we're going to jump in there. One other point I might ask in terms of what the Asian community could do. One, as far as the Asian Report is concerned, they need to get involved in politics. Make sure that they identify those leaders coming from the minority community across the board, people who are running for office. Interview them, understand what their platforms are, and make it inclusive of some of the issues that the Asian community has. But at the same time, the Asian community should support, if you will, the other minorities, African Americans and the others, and whatever. I mean, that's a major issue there. You know, just sitting aside and just getting the money, as far as minorities are concerned, that's not helping the cause at all. And I might add also too, yes, when they showed those films, those videos nationally, showing where Blacks were basically pushing Chinese and other Asians out there publicly, so to speak. You got to understand, and I'm from the South also too, but there were a number of Asian businesses in the Black community, but in many ways they wouldn't hire any Blacks. They wouldn't hire any Blacks. And, you know, they had stores, but Blacks wasn't able to go to the bank and get monies to open up their stores. There was just only a few of them, if you will. So let's get to the table now. If we're going to take advantage of the opportunities that Blacks and African Americans have made available to everybody, we never said no. If that's the case, then hey, we need to talk about that stuff. We need support because voting rights is very key now. I mean, in all due respect, the major party has made it very clear. We want to make sure that we do not want Blacks to be voting in this next election. That's a fact. Right now today, that's the politics today. So we need to get together and sit down to the table. I mean, excuse the French. How many Asians is going to take to fill in the cracks of those Blacks, the cracks, if you will, so they can. So my point that we're still in a position of strength in terms of voting, if you will. But the fact of the matter is, it's not just going to happen because, in all due respect, many Asians, in all due respect, have basically just been white for a long time, straight up. It's not an easy call. So I've been here for quite some time, and I understand the impact it has on African Americans. But just like Rachelle said, it's been on the back of black folks that a lot of them are surviving today and in business. Okay, so let's make sure we think about that. And right up front, my first thing would be the key is that in the Portland area, I saw the films that they were talking about. The people were demonstrating with their cars. I saw no black folks at all holding a sign. Were they called? Did you call these folks to get them involved, to be inclusive? That's what we're going to have to do. I mean, we got to talk about it. So I would suggest to them that, hey, look, contact the NAACP. Got me? Contact the blacks who are in office. Contact the Joanne Hardises of the world. Just contact people. Contact the ministers. This, that, and the other. So let's get involved. We're gonna do this, but it's for all, because we're just educating the majority community. Why inclusiveness? Inclusive. If we don't do this thing inclusive, we're gonna lose this country. We're gonna lose this right up front with it. We're gonna lose the U.S. We cannot afford to be divided. We are a melting pot, and let's accept it. Okay, that's my last point. Now,
one of the other things before you move on, another issue that is near and dear to my heart is vaccination for senior citizens in Oregon. And I personally went through the process over the last couple of weeks, but I have been trying to get registered. First you got to get registered and then get scheduled to take the daggone vaccine. And I've talked to at least 9 friends and family who've talked to 9 friends and family who had an issue with 9 other friends and family asking, well, how did you get scheduled for the vaccine? Well, what I found out is that they make it so hard for black senior citizens, even though the governor says, and the county and the city and the county are saying that there's a huge disparity and there's a greater amount of black senior citizens dying as opposed to being able to easily get tested and get the vaccine for the virus. It's not happening. And as researching, it's like what I do, I found out that a lot of the dosage of these vaccines have been sent to other counties and other municipalities, and these places are getting more than what they ordered, more dosage than what they've ordered. But I didn't see anything about the dosage being returned or reappropriated. So that's another thing that's on my mind. So what people can do now, they can call 211. They call 211 and go to the vaccine line for senior citizens, and right now it's for senior citizens ages 60 and up, and they can ask for to be on the Liz Taylor account.
Okay.
And they will schedule those people.
Okay. All right. That's a good one. Well, I tell you what we'll do now is that let's just go on and jump into this whole issue with the Joanne, city council person, Joanne Hardisty. Okay. And the issue that's on it's a topic, a major topic here in our midst at this point in time, is the various attacks that you've had on her, even as a result of being blamed for the hit and run, and then all of a sudden it was exposed that in fact it wasn't her. But you know what? Had she not had that press conference, it would not have been an issue. If anything, she would have just been basically possibly just ran out of town. That's whatever. I mean, we would have known nothing. But she was the one that carried, if you will, the press conference that basically all of a sudden it exploded, meaning that those media folks got out there and started doing something. Even the media folks that got this thing, in many ways, represented some of the major newspapers here within our area, who, by the way, were basically jumped on board right off the bat and said that she was the person that did the hit and run. But that was my point. It wasn't the fact. But one of the reporters was the one that got that thing going. Do you remember that, Rachelle?
Bruce, is it that we all look alike? Why couldn't they didn't recognize her? What happened?
Oh, well, I tell you, I don't know. I was talking to Liz for a moment. She said she knew the person that was in that other car. Okay? Liz, Liz, can you share a little bit about us about this young lady?
It was a mystery to me, and it goes back to what Rachelle said, is we all look alike, because the two females do favor in terms of profile. But the news said that Joanne Hardesty, the difference between the two was that Joanne Hardesty had the long hair, and the other person that was actually driving the car had short hair, but the other person is still denying that that was her. But the picture, they had a picture of outdoor, I don't know, it was radar pictures but there was a clear picture of this woman that rear-ended this other woman's vehicle and took off. And the woman that was the victim's, I mean, you could hear her. She called into 911 and said that this woman had been following her for at least three traffic lights, and she said she recognized the woman clearly. She recognized her, and her name was her name. She was the city commissioner. And I just could not believe, she was so sure. She was just so sure that this was the city commissioner. And it took off from there.
Well,
and we realize now she was very wrong. And we realize once again, this is an act of white supremacy, of being so sure you can't be wrong. Now, I don't know what the person's situation was. And it doesn't matter if they're white or black, because the number one people thing to throw out is, well, she was black. It doesn't matter. I haven't actually followed the story to see the picture. I was surprised there was a picture out. I didn't see the picture.
Yeah,
Let's all go and look that up. It's what?
There is a picture, I guess.
But the picture wasn't.
Big Brother is watching everywhere.
No, but Liz, in all due respect, the picture wasn't out when the announcement.
No, all this is happening after the fact. All this is
right. Yeah, there was no picture.
They just started the investigation, I guess, this past Monday. So once they started the investigation, they had to find out. They had to uncover the police report, and there was no police report. And then all of a sudden, you hear that the president of the police association resigned. But I hear he resigned, but he wasn't fired. He was just promoted. He was just sent to another position in the police department. And then who is this guy? The previous president of the police association came back off retirement, I guess, to hold this spot, I guess, to deal with what's yet to unfold with the story of Commissioner Hardesty. So I'm anxious to see how this is going to unfold.
Okay, but make it very clear about who you're talking about. You see what I mean? We talk about this.
I believe, Liz?
Yes.
I'm sorry for cutting you off, Bruce. Was that Daryl Turner that you said returned?
Yes.
And is now holding another position?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I heard as well. And I'm shocked, but not surprised.
Okay.
I'm shocked because, one, I didn't know. It was a very quiet move. Who determined that if he resigned, that he could scoop up another position? Is the public aware about this? Because I wasn't. I found out.
But I've done the research on that, and it seems like once you're in a position like that with the police association, that there is no quitting or leaving the organization. You're just moved to another position.
No, let me share a thought here.
We don't know of anybody that's been fired yet.
Okay, no.
Like that.
In all due respect, Daryl Turner spent about 29 years with the Portland Police Department. He retired this past January. The man was out of town, if you will.
Okay.
Since this issue happened, the present police, the guy who basically was relieved, if you will, basically left his job, so to speak. And just like you said, he's still with the Portland Police Department aspect of it. And then Darryl now is sitting in that seat. He is now the president of the association. Okay, got me? But at the same time, a lot of people don't know Daryl Turner is black. He's an African American, if you will. We need to know that. And I think we made that point at I think it was our last show. A lot of times, if there's anything that happens with a black, if you will, that might be something of seriousness aspect of it, they will always bring in another black. You can always find another black to counter a black. And Joanne Hardesty, Commissioner Hardesty, falls in that category. She's a very outspoken person, basically doing her job on city council.
Doing a
The
good
bottom
job.
line is that not too many people can talk. In fact, the mayor can, and in many ways. So the name of the game is that Daryl was called, and that's just, now this is my own personal opinion. Why would they go on and have Daryl come back and take the job? The man's retired. I mean, why not just go on and the person that they just basically was already there said he made a mistake? Well, share the mistake. Share the mistake and sorry or whatever, and then both of the, you know what I mean? Deal with the issue. Don't sit down there and play.
Okay, so I'm gonna push back, Bruce. I'm gonna push back. Okay,
Talk
put
to
your
me.
juice up, Bruce.
Okay, I always have been.
You ready? Okay, so here's my pushback. My
Hold on.
pushback is the
Okay.
act against Commissioner Hardesty was an act of racism and white supremacy.
I agree.
And I don't know who's involved completely. I'm waiting for that investigation to come out. But thus far as I've heard, white supremacy act whenever they had an opportunity to make a change. So if the woman had accidentally identified Commissioner Hardesty, an investigation would have shown that it was not Commissioner Hardesty. Instead, it was leaked, ruining her reputation.
Yep.
Some people will never get the correction. Some people
Right.
will believe it's a cover-up. And so bringing Daryl Turner back doesn't fix it for me.
That's right.
What fixes it for me is when we respect Joanne Hardesty as a leader, elected official in this community. I'm very disappointed in the Portland Police. Once again, I'm very disappointed that Daryl Turner is back. I don't know if that's the right decision. I'm going to say that it's the wrong decision.
It is
I'm
wrong.
going to say again, it speaks much of white
Yeah.
supremacy.
It is.
And so before I could have thought of it as one error. And now I see the compounding errors. And so I just have to say, it looks like a racist move to disenfranchise Joanne Hardesty. Am I wrong?
Because I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're right on point, because the guy that Daryl has replaced stated he made a terrible error. And
What error?
he made a terrible mistake, but he will not and does not, according to his attorneys, he does not have to state, he does not have to tell what the mistake was that he made. But the reason that he left that position was because he made a terrible mistake, a terrible error, but he does not have to say what it is.
Wait a minute, Liz. Wait a minute. Now remember now, he's an employee. He's an employee to the taxpayers. And in
But
all
he
due
needs to
respect,
tell us. He needs to
well,
tell
well,
us what was the mistake. What did you do?
I'm agreeing with I agree to that part. But this other business about he won't tell it. I mean, how he's going to say he's not going to tell it, and they're just going to keep him in the department? No, this is ridiculous. This thing has to be resolved. In fact, I will say this again, and just being straight up with you, I really feel that the mayor knew about this piece before all this thing came out. Because in all due respect, if I was sitting there as a mayor aspect of it, I would have just basically said, my chief probably would have came in there and told me about the whole piece. I'm talking about Lavelle, the guy who is the present chief. But guess what? If you notice, you haven't even seen Lavelle yet talk about this issue. He's the chief of police, basically chief of the troops, if you will. And we've not heard anything about what he thought about this issue. He should have been basically reporting to the mayor. They should have discussed this thing. This is a city commissioner. This issue should have been taken care of real quick, like. And in all due respect, the person should have been fired. We don't even know what the mistake was. And they've said, we don't have to tell you to say. What do you mean? We don't have to tell you. we don't have to tell you. And in all due respect, I heard this was coming from the police department.
Well, inquiring minds want to know.
No, it's not just inquiring minds. I mean, the bottom line is just like Rachelle said, this is about racism and hate. Straight up with it, and so we need to get down, and it's there. It's on the table right now. It's being discussed. It can't go away, if you will. You got me? It has to be resolved. Her name should be reinstated, if you will, and the mayor should fess up. whether or not, and I'm asking him the question today. I mean, what was the mistake? Did you make the decision, Mayor, because you're in charge? Did you make the decision to keep him on the police department? That's your decision. That was his decision, the mayor's decision. It wasn't anybody else's decision to keep it, to allow him to keep it on there. And I'm just saying, that needs to come up front. And hopefully the media will push that out there.
Well, I want to add something. I agree 100%. And I want to add something that maybe Ted Wheeler hasn't thought about. Ted Wheeler is actually making the police very unsafe. He's making our city very unsafe.
I agree.
You know, I've told you a few stories about my having some personal incidents with some of the crime that's resulting from his poor policy.
Yes.
But he's also additionally targeting African Americans and Blacks by basically saying it's okay to harass us. So this is like a dog whistle call, and in my opinion, I feel like it's racist. And maybe he doesn't, that's not his intent, but by involving the police department and not holding them accountable.
Right.
Okay? Because we know something went wrong, mistakes were made, and when mistakes are made, we need correction. Is the person going to get retrained before they come back on board? Are they going to issue policies because they're going to come back on board? Is the mayor going to issue a policy to the Black community for coming up? Do I look like Joanne Hardesty? I'm not sure anymore. Okay? So that makes me feel like at any moment I could be called out for something I didn't do by very powerful men in uniforms. And so I think the police need to be held to account by Ted Wheeler, and I don't see him doing it, and I don't see him having his other commissioners back, and I think it's shameful. And I'm just wondering, when all this comes out, do they not expect another protest? Because that's what I see coming.
Let me add to that.
Protest coming.
Let me add to what you're talking. Let me add to what you're talking about when you say Portland is becoming very unsafe. As a researcher, again, this time last year, there was only one killing from a shooting for the first 3 months of the year. This year already, since we've decriminalized illicit drugs, we have 20 killings already. Last year, 2020, there was only 55 total shootings, killings, murders. This year, we're at 20 already.
I want to say, Liz, I'm not sure if your numbers are right, because I seem like I've heard 20 myself. I feel like I've heard 20 shootings myself. So maybe they're not getting them all, because it's become very violent to the point that I don't want to do anything at night.
Just shootings, murders.
Yeah. You know, if it's at night, I'm like, oh, I'll take a pass. It used to be that Portland was very safe. I could take a walk, and now I don't want to take a walk. I had an issue today where I didn't want to go into a stairwell. It's just becoming where I'm noticing everything that I do in places that I felt very safe before. I don't feel safe at all. And I feel like Ted Wheeler is protecting a lot of the people who make me feel unsafe. And I felt like the natural outcome is there's going to be protest, potentially broken glass, potentially all centered downtown. And there are many houses, people downtown who are going to be harmed as a result of tear gas that Ted is going to pass. And it's the same scenario over and over again.
Let's stay on this deal with the street car. This Joanne Hardesty piece. I think is a very important piece, very serious piece for that matter. She's in an elected position. She's got cohorts there. In fact, there's 5 people, including the mayor, if you will. You got me. And the chain of command is the mayor, okay, and the 3 votes of the 5, if you will, after the end of the discussion. Yeah. And this issue with her, I mean, you start thinking about the other issues that there was similar. If there were, the guy is just, in all due respect, you know, he's had his first attempt, if you will, an opportunity to be a leader. In all due respect, he just hasn't done it. You know what I mean? And it just so happened that the major media supported him this last round, if you will. And this is a fact, if you will, had not the Oregonian, the Willamette Week, and the Tribune not endorsed him, he would not be mayor. The man did not win. He never got the 50%, if you will, of the vote. Got me? Anyway, but had any one of those newspapers said no and endorsed, if you will, the other person, that person would have been there. All due respect. Okay. So with that said, I think we're getting ready to go into the summer, and all I see is that when I saw that advertisement piece, when he had a press conference and saw it on national news, there he was talking about Portland, sort of like an invitation. Well, come on, someone, come all. We're open for business. You can come down here and protest all you want. No problem. We're not going to put you in jail or anything of that nature. We're not going to do this. We just come on over. You can come on downtown, break all the windows and this, that, and the other, wear your mask and this, that. And I said, you got to be kidding me. Now we're looking at, and this is just my opinion, we're looking at the same situation and at the same time with another pandemic coming. That's the other thing that's being laid out there from a national perspective. We're going to be having another pandemic. People are going to be really stressed out. And we're going to really have some major problems. So as far as I'm concerned, I think what he should do, he should say, look, you did your job, Mayor Wheeler, why don't you just go on and resign? Why don't you just, don't cause it, because I understand there's a recall coming on board right at this point in time. Why have that expense on the taxpayers again? We're going to be spending a lot of money. We're going to be adding more fuel to the fire for racism and hate in this city between all factions for that particular matter. We cannot afford, if you will, to be waiting for another 6 to 8 months for the whole summer.
Yeah.
While we're resolving this problem that he'll probably be recalled this time. A lot of groups are very, very much interested in this recall this time around, and they're well organized. So in all due respect, Ted, hey, look, man, why don't you just go on and resign and just say, I didn't have the background. You did the best job you could, if you will. You did the best job you could, and I'm just throwing that out to the table. What do you think, folks? Rachelle?
I'm right with you. The taxpayers are responsible for the police settlement of police brutality that comes out of our taxes. That's money that we pay. When they say the city paid out, actually that's not the case. The city paid out and we paid for. So our taxes go for that. Instead of being used on things like houselessness, development, clearly we don't have enough low-income housing. We don't have enough supplies for our professionals. And I noticed the other day, folks were out not wearing masks, and we're going to keep our state shut down if we don't provide enough PPE even for the houseless to be able to use to slow down the pandemic. Ted Wheeler, the buck stops with him. It's not that I think that he's individually doing things. Individually, I think that he's probably the same. You'd probably be fine living next door to him. But what you wouldn't be fine with is having him in a pandemic with a housing emergency, with a police brutality emergency, with the Department of Justice looking over our shoulders, and a loss of taxpayer revenue because of all the business being shut down. That's a very difficult situation to be in for anyone. And clearly, he just doesn't have the skill set to navigate it. And I have worked with very skilled people in D.C. I've had the honor and the pleasure of working with all sorts of people, worked on campaigns for elected officials. And I just don't see that he has that skill set, that flexibility to apply innovative solutions. And that doesn't mean that he wouldn't be good in some great position, other positions, but I don't think this one is it for him.
No,
Portland has changed.
Not mayor. No, not mayor.
Maybe 4 years ago, but I think the opportunity for him to correct what he needed to in Portland has passed. I think resignation is the proper thing to do at this point, and to save the taxpayers all the money and the stress that comes with not having any leadership. We're already there with misdirected leadership. Just save us the trouble, save us the money, and move on.
Yes. I appreciate everything that you said there. And I might add, too, when you're talking about that whole issue of the pandemic aspect of it, you would have thought with the whole issue of the first pandemic that those homeless folks should have been vaccinated. They're not even in the mix. You don't hear anything about the mix of vaccinating those folks. If I was there, they would have been the first ones because they're out there right up front, walking around and basically spreading. I hate to put it this way, spreading, if you will, the pandemic, if you will, the COVID-19 piece. I mean, and then the other thing is about picking up the trash. Look at our city. Look at it. We were considered the city of roses, the cleanest. That's part of our economic development, if you will, in the city. The living room, if you will, of the state of Oregon. People fly into here purposely to come down here and spend some money.
Right.
We're a very clean city, and look at it. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
You can't drive anywhere. There's stuff all over the city, and then allowing protesting. Then another point I would make. I was sitting in that seat. The first thing I would have done with that protesting piece is make sure we had that in check before the summer, meaning that there would be no protesting at night, especially now, at night. Because if people are still wearing masks and this, that, and the other. Look, it's at night. No problem with doing the day, and come out with some sort of a permit. Have somebody sign the thing up and maybe get an insurance policy or something, because that's what you normally do. That's what I did when I was down at the Buffalo Soldier and we marched downtown or whatever. I had to quote sign the deal, and at the same time I had to make sure that I signed the bond. So if there's any problem, it wasn't on the backs of the taxpayers.
Right.
Okay. So I'm just saying, there's some, like Rachelle was saying, there's some creative thing. He's not creative because he doesn't have the resume. He doesn't have the background. You have to be exposed. And look, I know he's got, the guy's from he's a multi-millionaire. And I'm not knocking that. That's what this country's all about. You can make as much as you want to. In fact, for $1, you might be able to pick up $500 million. But the fact of the matter is that that's not what we need. We need people with experience. That's all I'm saying. So I agree with you, Rachelle, on that whole piece, and also you, Liz. This discussion is not to be anti Ed Miller, the mayor. The fact of the matter is, man, you did the job for 4 years. It just didn't work out. But please don't push it. And for those leaders that are out there who are basically looking at it from their particular property downtown, this is not just downtown, this is the entire city of Portland. We're having problems outside, over and above just downtown. We got to clean up this entire city.
We went downtown with a friend's dog. We were so afraid we won't take the dog downtown for a walk anymore because we were so afraid about the dog's pads, the nail pads, and the needles and things like that. So we were looking all around and we didn't find it relaxing. We have beautiful architecture. We have some new buildings going up, some beautiful architecture. And it just seems like it was a very nice, beautiful day. But between the waste and the boarded up buildings, it didn't give us a great feeling. And we had a nice talk with a houses person, and they were telling us they don't like the trash either, and the city is not giving them any parts of the $53 million that they got to help them to clean up the trash. They say they don't want to live in it. That's what they said. They said, we just keep moving because we don't have a place to put it, and we're trying, and not all of them are. We know that some of them have some issues that make it impossible for them to actually fit into society and do the things that we expect. But there are a lot of them that just don't want to live that way, and they need a hand up instead of a hand out.
Yes.
So that they can get into places where they have security. And they want to work, and many of them are able to work. They're just not able to work in a pandemic. Downtown is a mess. I don't feel like it's a treat to go downtown and celebrate my birthday or just go for a walk. As a small business owner, I know that this is killing businesses. It's killing businesses. We have all these carts. People want to come to the carts, try all the different foods. You can get Pakistani food, Indian food, Creole food. You get all these foods, and it's wonderful. But not if you have to step around needles and human waste. And Liz, what do you think?
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. On top of, you don't want to have to dodge bullets. You don't want to have to dodge bullets. You don't want to have to be around. The parks are not safe anymore. You're going to have to go outside of Multnomah County, it seems, to be able to live and enjoy the outdoors, parks, and the beauty that Oregon has to offer. Because
Okay.
Portland no longer is a city of roses, eco-friendly, green city. And it's getting worse by the day.
Well, guess what? It's my understanding, that was another point we didn't bring up in the current news aspect of it, about what the city of Portland is doing, especially through Mayor Ed Willard. What about the fact that Mayor Willard just hired a former mayor of the city of Portland, Sam Adams?
Oh,
I mean, Sam, I like Sam, but the fact that he was chief of staff to Vera Katz, who spent about 3 terms. That's about 12 years. Okay, and I mean, if anybody had some ideas of how to keep a city clean, he should have been there, right, under Vera Katz. But then all of a sudden, he became mayor of the city of Portland, and I supported him during that particular time. But he had these issues too. Okay. But you would think that he would have had the background, and if he had the background, then guess what? He ran for city council seat. He ran for city council seat and lost. So that means, guess what? How is he going to be positive about doing something along that particular line of keeping the city going? So now the mayor's hired him, and said that he's going to clean up the city. Well, he didn't have the background to clean up the city. Clearly, he didn't have the background. And I'm not knocking that with Sam. I mean, hey, Sam's had he's got his retirement and this, that, and other. We need leadership in this town. We need someone that's going to be able to be respected by the police, the troops, if you will, and be responsible, and let these people on city council do their job. We voted them in, we're paying them. We want this city clean, and we want it safe, and we want to make sure that the whole issue with the homeless are taken care of, and get those shots and get it done.
And we want our kids to be educated.
That's another serious problem. The largest school district in the state of Oregon, and we got the worst failure of all, and especially blacks along that line. Got me? So we got a lot of issues, but I'm just saying we're throwing that on the table. So here we go again, and and hopefully, and we're reaching out. By the way, I want to reach out to again the new president of the Police Bureaus Association, in Daryl Turner. We'd like to invite him to come on the show. We want Daryl to come on the show, and let's see whether or not we can help him, if you will, get to some of the problems, especially protesting and police. And we got public safety taken care of. We want to help, because right now we do not have, I agree with him on that end. We got the mayor and the city council are not being able to respond to the issue of public safety. You need someone close. And Daryl's been there 19 years. He's been sitting up in that seat, I think 19 years, basically running the police department, the troops. And he's been very responsive. But the man retired. But he had to come back. You mean to tell me there was no one else in the police department that could have taken that seat? Got me? And where's the Chief Lavelle? I mentioned that once before. We have a chief of police. What are we paying him for? If in fact Daryl is running the police department, I'm saying it straight up. If anybody has knowledge, I know exactly what it's at. It's a paraprofessional, paramilitary group, if you will. I spent my time in the Marine Corps. I understand the chain of command. We don't have no chain of command. Sergeant Major, the first sergeant, is running the police department. That's it. So where's the chief, and where's the mayor? We don't have anybody. And it's not their fault. They don't have the background. They don't have the resume to do the job. Bottom line. So we got to think about that when we start. And I'm throwing this out to the people across the board. Next time we have an election process, make sure we check out the resumes of people who are running for office. First, in fact, we need to know what that office is looking for. Mm-hmm. So when that platform is thrown out there, then people have to go in there and put their name down and make sure to the media. Media, make sure you ask questions of that. If anything, try to put the platform together before it's announced that it's open.
Right.
Let the platform be seen in media totally. And then therefore, when a person starts signing up, if they don't meet that criteria of that platform with their resume, hey, as far as I'm concerned, they shouldn't even be allowed to run. I mean, just straight out. But I mean, freedom of press, whatever, you know. But the bottom line is that, hey, we can't afford any more problems. I'm going to be able to go downtown and have my cup of coffee. At my age, at this point in time, I paid my dues. Now, the worst thing they can do is, excuse the French, is make me mayor. But I've run for mayor twice. And trust me, I would have cleaned this thing up overnight.
Well, Bruce, the other thing I want to add that's realistic, and I had to have this conversation as well. I feel like with the level of problems that we've had downtown, and I want to say that it's not just protesters, okay? Because I feel like the police do incite a fair amount of violence. So I feel like downtown has just become a hostile place, and as such, many business folks will be leaving downtown. And that's fine, but here's the problem. We're going to have a bunch of empty spaces, and we're going to have no jobs.
Right.
Because people go downtown, they have dinner, they go to the theater, and in some places, some point 2022, we're going to have a theater again. We're going to welcome that. And who's going to want to go downtown to have a meal? The restaurant's going to be closed up, and go to the theater. So we're going to lose the tourism dollar. We're going to lose small businesses. I've been victimized myself. My building has been victimized numerous times, and it's only so long you can hold on.
Yep.
It's only so long you can hold on. The police need to change so that people don't feel like they need to go downtown and have a protest. Frankly, I'm tired of protesting. I don't want to protest anymore. I feel like they don't want to hear us. And I feel like this thing with Joanne Hardesty is more proof positive that Black women are the lowest of the low, and we don't get protected by the police. We certainly don't get protected by Mayor Ted Wheeler. So I'm not sure who they are protecting, but it's not me. It's not me as a small business owner. It's not me as a Black woman. Who is it?
I tell you what, on that public safety thing, you brought something up right off the bat. In all due respect, if I was sitting up in that seat and if I was in charge aspect of it, I'd forget about the union piece and make the excuse. And I'm going to use a word. I'm going to use the guy's name. I'd say, okay, Daryl, I'm going to make you chief of police. He's got 19 years. He's got 29 years on the police department. As far as I'm concerned, we've not had any killings on him per se. But my point is that he's shown some leadership and he's out there. So my point is that if he's back, let's take advantage of it. So in all due respect, if we got to get someone other than Wheeler aspect of it, it would be nice to have someone that has some background, and he has that background. But get rid of the union. The union can't just run before the police department anymore. The mayor's office and the city council has to run that police department. Mm-hmm. And the way you do that is a chain of command. Just make sure you got a good chief, if you will. And then all of a sudden that covers the city commissioner's position too. I mean the police commissioner. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He's the chief of police and he knows what's going on. Mm-hmm. And then the mayor basically say, okay, you're the chief of police. I got a problem over here. Blah, 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 blah. He takes care of the job. He takes care of it. That's exactly, it's paramilitary. That's how we did it. I'm not trying to be a hard-nosed Marine, if you will, that man. But guess what? It worked. We never had any problems. Never had any problems. If you did something wrong, trust me, you either lost your stripes or you lost your bars on your collar, point blank. And if you go beyond that point, you go to jail, straight up. You will not be there, straight up. And the public knows exactly what you did. We all knew what he did or she did. See? And we didn't need any body cameras, straight up. But if in fact we need body cameras here, that's what we need now. It's my understanding Daryl Turner supported body cameras. He supported body cameras. He did that about 2 or 3 press conferences many times. But guess what? His point was that the city said to him, we can't afford body cameras because we want to do something else with the money. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
And you know what they did with the money? Part of the money, they paid out $2 million for Quantis Hayes, who was shot by Andrew Hurst several years back. And here's the thing. Andrew Hurst is still employed by the police department.
Mm.
So the citizens paid out money. That's less money for other things. We have to start looking at these things in terms of the lives, the cost to the personal lives, and the cost to the citizens who don't think they're involved. They don't think, well, you know, they're not related, they don't know these people, so it's just a dollar figure. But when you have a budget and X amount percentage of your budget is going to mistakes, that's mismanagement.
Yes, it is.
In my opinion, risk management says that you would lower the risk of having unexpected expenditures. That's why we have insurance. So why do we have a police department that every other day is popping up with a problem that the taxpayers need to pay for? Because I'm frankly tired of paying for other people's problems. And I have a problem paying for my own.
Hey, Rachelle, check this out. And Liz, you can solve that problem overnight too. Check this out. If a person came in to basically want to join the Portland Police Department, one of the criteria is this. Okay, fine. Here's your job. Here's your job description. If anything comes out of the unusual comes up, that's what happens. Okay, you'll face the court system as a private citizen. If you come out guilty, you pay for it. If you don't come out guilty, we pay for it.
Right.
You got me? We'll pick up that tab about you being off and this, that, and the other. We'll pick all that stuff up. But if you're found guilty, just like any other citizen, like taxpayers, right. When you go to court, you got to pick up the tab, right? You know what
Exactly.
I mean? See, all of a sudden, when a person starts thinking about doing something wrong, they're going to think twice before they do that, because they're going to be thinking my retirement is gone. You know, I might go to jail. If I do this and it's racist or this, that, and the other, you know. So I'm just throwing just some common sense stuff. They don't. The police, the average person on the street, if they're carrying a weapon, and they can shoot, the thing is, hey, I'm scared, I'm gonna shoot first. That's automatic.
Yep.
But on the other hand, if you've been trained to take care of yourself, you're gonna get a second thought. I mean, I've interviewed Don DePay. He's written a book. He was Portland Police Department, and he was telling me how many times he even pulled his weapon out in the old days. And I've talked to some other guys. Bruce, I never shot anybody. I might have hit them upside the head, if you will, with a slapstick. They might have come up with a headache and this, that, and other, but they weren't dead. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? So my point is that common sense a lot of times would solve a lot of the problem. But like I said, I'm not the department. I'm not the police department. You guys are. Okay.
Certainly don't have to reinvent the wheel.
That's right. Well, look like we're at that point in time, and we want to make sure you tell the viewing audience out there, the viewing audience, please share the show. Okay? Please share the show. We want you to share the show because people out there want to know what can we do. So join us. These are just our deal. Get together with little gatherings like we've done and talk about these issues and share that with the public. Okay? Ladies, thank you very, very much. Rachelle, Liz, this has been awesome. Thank you very, very much. And as George Page used to say, back for what you believe in. Have a go.